Subnautica is a game set on planet 4546b, completely filled with water. And I'm just an idiot with thalassophobia. A very, very bad case of thalassophobia. I have a terrible fear of the ocean. In a game where 99% of your actions are in the water, I really wanted to try this out, but really didn't at the same time. There are some amazing places and creatures in this game, and some not so amazing, scary creatures in this game. If I don't successfully complete this game with under 50 hours playtime on my Steam account, I'll do a video where I spawn myself in the void and try to survive based on just that. After scrambling into my life pod,
2, 1.
Watching the Aurora literally explode, getting knocked out, putting out a fire, I finally got my bearings and realized I was on an alien planet. I 360'd into the water and was ready to explore. I got a bit carried away farming in the caves and didn't realise I was about to drown. I caught my breath and then went fishing for some bladderfish. After returning to the fabricator, I made myself a scanner, a flashlight and the survival knife. I needed to head into a cave to find some sulfur. I crafted myself the repair tool and fixed up the life pod. I also repaired the comms in the life pod so I could receive radio messages.
Rescue operation will be dispatched to your location in 9 hours.
Well, that's reassuring. After learning that I was essentially fucked, I had to learn how to survive on this planet. My first initial plan was to look around at some of the wreckages to see if I could find anything to basically help me survive. What I was really after though was a sea glide. I was lucky enough to find the first blueprint pretty easily, however the second one wasn't so easy. While searching, I managed to find a blueprint for the mobile vehicle bay, which is always good. I must have missed this a couple times, but literally right next to the other sea glide there was another blueprint. After spending the rest of the endgame night gathering up the materials, I finally crafted my own sea glide. Things started to look a little less grim, until I checked my radio and...
From the cafeteria, what the hell, guys? They didn't warn us this might happen. Our pod was almost crushed by the Seamoth Bay on the way down. Now we're hanging on the edge of a cave system. This grim-looking snake thing trying to eat through the...
I heard this and genuinely got chills. If you've played Subnautica before, you know exactly what this guy is talking about. I stayed at the location for a little bit, kinda contemplating things. Now I'll be honest, I know there isn't a Reaper down there. I've been down there before, but there's always that reminder that at some point I'm gonna have to face one of those things. Regardless, I headed down and got the Seamoth fragment, along with the abandoned PDA. I stayed down at this depth because sandstone outcrops are pretty common down here. While I was exploring, I found a blueprint for the laser cutter and the second fragment of the mobile vehicle bay. Apparently I was hitting the jackpot and I also found a part of the bioreactor. I finished up scanning the last few fragments I could find and then I headed back to the surface. I played another message and luckily no Reaper Leviathans this time, however they were talking about their sea glide fragments. While I already had a sea glide, I knew this area held the compass. I headed back to the pod and looked at what the compass needed to be crafted. I crafted the compass and this would help me if I got lost or if I just needed to navigate somewhere. I ventured back out to find some more blueprints, but my end goal was to get the mobile vehicle bay. I already had the Seamoth, so all I needed now was the vehicle bay to craft it. I entered this small wreckage and found the last blueprint that I needed, along with some other things like these databank entries and some more blueprints. I headed back to the pod, and then my PDA told me that Aurora would probably be detonating within the next 2 hours. While that sounds bad, it immediately gives me the radiation suit, so I immediately am able to explore more. A short 2 hours later I was minding my own business on my vehicle bay, and then... the Aurora was about to explode.
3, 2.
As if the game didn't remind me enough already, I knew I was completely fucked now. Like I said before, the radiation suit was added to my PDA. Used to the feeling of hopelessness, I didn't give the explosion a second thought, and just started working towards getting that radiation suit ready. While crafting, I got another distress call. While I was ready to go down, it had a depth of 300 meters, so I decided to skip it for now. I got a pop-up for another message, and a ship called Sunbeam has contacted our life pod. This is the first glimmer of hope I've had since I've crashed on this planet.
We're gonna bring you home. Sunbeam out.
Whether that was true or not, I was very excited to see my new Seamoth.
Welcome aboard, Captain.
Yeah, baby. I crafted up a spare fuel cell for the Seamoth, and decided it was finally time to head to the Aurora. Once again, if you've played this game before, you know exactly what is next. Reluctantly heading towards the Aurora, I was practically shaking in fear of what was about to happen. It felt like I was heading headfirst into my own death. The water grew murkier and murkier, and my vision got less. As I got closer to the Aurora, I could hear the roars of the absolute demon. I safely reached the open front end of the Aurora. The wrecked structure of the ship allowed me to go even further inside. I picked up some blueprints, but unfortunately, this was all for now on the Aurora. I didn't have the propulsion cannon. I couldn't progress any further, but fortunately, that is the exact blueprint I just picked up. I tried for about 20 real-life minutes to jump, squeeze, anything to get through this little area blocked off by these boxes. Unfortunately, I just would need the propulsion cannon to get through here. Poking my head a little too close over the edge, I then slipped off the Aurora and straight into the water. And there it was, the Reaper Leviathan. I turned off my water textures to get a better view. While I was currently at a safe distance, if I tried to escape, making too much noise with my Seamoth, even the lights on the Seamoth draw this thing towards me. I wasn't necessarily safe, and I really did not want to be attacked by this thing. Unfortunately, it was more waiting for me, because the Reaper really was guarding exactly where I needed to leave. I ended up poking around a bit more on the Aurora. I didn't really find much, I was just wasting some time. I took another look back at the Reaper, and it seemed to be going the opposite direction, so I took this as my chance. However, as I edged closer, it did too. I really needed to escape because my water levels were getting low, and I got pretty dangerously close to it this time. I turned my textures back on, and I just booked it out of there. If this thing was going to chase me, I think I could have outrun it. Moving away in my Seamoth, I felt a hell of a lot safer, but there was still that bit of feeling knowing I'd have to go back to the Aurora. It was essentially the next thing I had to do. I'd be paying that Reaper another visit very, very, very soon. I needed to go into the Aurora with some sort of a plan. I was after the depth module on the Seamoth. To get this, I'd need the propulsion cannon. I need to craft that first, and then I need to head into the Aurora with a decent amount of food supply, water supply, and health packs. If I can pull all of this off correctly, I can progress through the next part of the game pretty easily. I started by gathering peepers for food and bladderfish for water. And I started crafting up all the ingredients I collected. I had a healthy supply of everything I needed, so I thought I was ready. I crafted the propulsion cannon and was ready to head to the Aurora for the second time. I headed back to the Aurora and essentially just pretended the Reaper didn't even exist. After boarding the massive ship, I approached those boxes which were blocking my path immediately. I got to the boxes and tested out my propulsion cannon, and it worked perfectly. After double checking my PDA, I entered the code and was allowed access into the next area of the Aurora. I repaired this door and entered, and there it was. I got the depth module Mark 1 for the Seamoth. Now my Seamoth could go down to 300 meters without taking any damage. Now I knew there was more things on the Aurora that I had access to and probably needed. However, I wanted to leave this for a little bit later on so I could have one final trip back here. Making sure to be cautious of the Reaper, I headed back to my life pod. After returning to my life pod, I came to the conclusion I just picked up the depth module for the Seamoth. I could do so much more now, and there wasn't really much point in waiting around in my life pod. At this lower depth, I found some useful blueprints, including the moon pool, which was really important. However, the reason I came out was for this life pod that was at 300 meters. Luckily here, I found a time capsule, and this had some extremely useful stuff, notably the laser cutter and the habitat builder. These were both things I haven't crafted yet, and now really didn't need to because of that. I also found the blueprints for the ultra high capacity tank, and a couple rubies, which are really rare and very useful for later on crafting recipes. I also found some diamonds, and while these aren't as valuable as they are in Minecraft, they're still very useful. Arguably not as useful as the rubies, I already had the laser cutter due to that time capsule. I was heading back to the life pod once again, and decided it got a bit boring heading to this thing every single time, so I decided I wanted to make a base with that new habitat builder I got. I already had some raw materials, so I just decided to get started immediately. While definitely not much so far, I liked it. Maybe things were starting to look up.